Welcome to Toxic Family Stories. My name is Elise Ward. They left me at a gas station just outside Reno. I was 13. My father told me to go inside and buy gum while my mother waited in the car. I came out with the change in my hand and watched their truck peel off down the highway. The wheels screamed over gravel. My throat closed before I could call out. I waited 4 hours, the sun melting the soles of my shoes, before I accepted they weren't coming back. A police officer found me crying behind a dumpster that night. He asked for my name. I told him I didn't know. They said I was troubled. They said I was angry, violent, broken. But they didn't know the truth. I had already survived everything they were too weak to face. Have you ever been thrown away like garbage and told it was your fault? Tell me where you're listening from. I will answer every comment. Let me tell you what happened next. I remember the rot. The garbage behind that gas station fermented under the Nevada heat, the scent pushing past my skin and into my bones. Banana peels, cheap perfume, engine oil, something that might have been meat. It clung to me even after I was back in a bed, even after I'd scrubbed my body raw in Aunt Lorraine's guest bathroom. Back then, I didn't cry loudly, just in little, gasping hitches, like my body wasn't sure it deserved the noise. That night behind the dumpster, I curled into the space between the wall and a flattened box of beer cans and counted the seconds between cars. That's how I knew hours passed. The officer who found me didn't look shocked. He just bent down and handed me a bottle of water. His badge said DeWitt, and his face was red and sweaty, but his voice was soft when he said, "You got a name, sweetheart?" "Maybe," I whispered. I still remember how the blue and red lights lit up the dirty walls around me. There were moths bouncing between the flashing beams. One of them landed on my knee. Stayed there. I was still enough not to scare it. They didn't send me home. They couldn't. No one answered the number I gave. The truck was registered to an old address in Elko that had been vacated for 6 months. The police station had a cot in the back, and I remember lying on it with my shoes still on, staring at the ceiling tiles. One of them had a water stain shaped like a boot print. I decided that was a sign. That I'd been stepped on. That there was no fixing me. 2 days later, Aunt Lorraine arrived. She didn't hug me. She didn't even sit down when the officer brought me out. She wore dark sunglasses and held a clipboard like it was a weapon. Her voice was brisk, irritated. "You'll follow my rules if you want my roof." I nodded. She signed the papers without asking me how I'd been. I wasn't surprised. My parents had always said Lorraine was cold. Distant. The weird one in the family. No kids. Never married. Lived alone in Sacramento, drove a black Lincoln with leather seats that smelled like vanilla and plastic. The air conditioning was on full blast. I felt dizzy the whole ride back. I wasn't allowed to talk in the car. That was her first rule. "I don't do chatter," Lorraine said, eyes fixed on the highway. "Don't confuse this for a rescue." I pressed my forehead against the glass and watched the desert turn to dry fields, then suburbs. I didn't ask where we were going. Didn't matter. All that mattered was that I was gone. Just like that. Like a mistake you erase in pencil. No one even tried to stop it. Her house was grey stucco, perfectly plain, sitting like a stiff shoulder in a cul-de-sac of bright California houses. She led me in and pointed at the guest room. It smelled like dust and lavender. There was a bed, made perfectly. No toys. No posters. Nothing that said a child might live here someday. "There's food in the fridge. I work early. You'll go to school Monday," she said. It was Friday. I spent that weekend learning the rules. Quiet hours. No leaving the house without written permission. Chores assigned by clipboard. Every rule was printed, laminated, and stuck to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a lemon. I remember that magnet more than anything. How happy it looked. The fridge was always full. The laundry always clean. Lorraine never touched me, never yelled, never asked why I flinched when someone knocked on the door. She fed me. She bought me school supplies. She gave me my own towel. That was more than anyone else had done. But it didn't feel like love. It felt like prison with curtains. Monday came, And I went to school. Middle school kids are wolves. They smell different like blood. My clothes were too clean. My face too blank. When the counselor introduced me as a temporary placement, I saw the gleam in a girl's eye, the kind of gleam that says I'm about to make you earn your place. That girl was Amber. She was sharp-tongued, dyed streaks in her hair, wore safety pins in her hoodie. First thing she ever said to me was, "Are you mute, or just rude?" I didn't answer. She sat next to me anyway. For 3 days straight. Didn't talk much. Just chewed her pen like it was a cigarette and smirked whenever someone whispered behind my back. By Friday, she'd slipped a note into my locker. Just 5 words. "I don't like my mom." It was the first time I felt less alone. But I didn't tell her. I couldn't. There was a part of me, still crawling behind that dumpster, that didn't believe I deserved friends. I was 13. I was already nothing but damage. Lorraine made me see a therapist named Devonte every Wednesday. He was young, patient, and wore bright blue socks with bananas on them. He smiled like he knew a secret about me. "I'm not broken," I told him during the first session. "Didn't say you were," he replied gently. "But you're bleeding all over your own hands." I stopped showing up by week 4. Lorraine didn't force me. She just left the appointment cards on the fridge. Right under that lemon magnet. Months passed. I got good at quiet. At watching. At learning people's tells. Amber taught me how to cheat on tests without getting caught. I taught her how to copy Lorraine's signature for hall passes. We made each other laugh without ever talking about home. But every night, I replayed it. The truck. The gum. The exact sound gravel makes when it's crushed beneath tires, leaving you behind. Every time the phone rang, I hoped it was them. I hated myself for that. Because even abandoned children crave permission. The first time I called them, it was almost a year later. I found the number in an old address book Lorraine kept in the drawer with the batteries and coupons. I dialed. My hands shook. My father answered. I recognized the voice instantly. "Hello." I didn't speak. "Hello. Is someone there?" Still, I stayed silent. Then, click. He hung up. I never called again. Years would pass before I heard his voice again. By then, I'd have millions in the bank and lawyers at my side. But that moment, that silent call, it became the proof I needed. Not that he left, but that he could forget. Sometimes I wonder if he knew it was me. Maybe he did. Maybe that's why he hung up. But back then, in that kitchen, holding that lemon magnet like it might save me from drowning, I told myself something that would change everything. I don't need to be wanted. I need to be remembered. And I would make damn sure I was. There was a lock on every door in Lorraine's house. Bedroom. Bathroom. Pantry. Even the linen closet had a deadbolt. Not all of them were locked, but the message was clear: everything could be. Access was a privilege, not a right. My bedroom was the only door without one. I used to stare at the blank wood and imagine a bolt slamming shut on the other side, trapping me in or keeping the world out. I couldn't decide which would be worse. The silence in her house wasn't peaceful, it was sharp, surgical. No background music. No humming. Just the ticking of a minimalist wall clock and the sound of my own thoughts grinding against each other like teeth. On weekends, Lorraine cleaned. She didn't speak while she scrubbed. I once tried to help, just to fill the space with movement. She glanced at me over her gloves and said flatly, "Don't do a job you're not prepared to finish." That was Lorraine. Every word carried weight. Measured, deliberate, heavy like stones in your pocket. She never hit me. Not once. But she knew how to leave bruises with her eyes. I didn't know until much later that she grew up in a group home. That she'd once escaped through a broken window at 15 and slept in the crawlspace of a church basement for a year before someone found her. She never said it. I found out through an old court file Amber helped me pull online one night when we were bored and nosy. That's when I realized we all carry locked rooms inside us. Lorraine just made hers real. The first time I saw Lorraine cry, it wasn't for me. It was on the phone, standing in the hallway, clutching the wall like the words she was hearing might knock her down. Her voice cracked once. Just once. No, I understand, she said into the receiver, her back to me. I'll take care of it. Then she hung up and walked into the kitchen like nothing happened. I burned dinner that night on purpose, just to see if she'd react. She scraped the pan clean and told me to start over. No yelling. No punishment. But she ate every bite of the second version, even though I knew it tasted like metal. Amber came over that weekend. Lorraine didn't speak to her. Just nodded and handed me a list of rules like I was running a halfway house. Amber ignored the list and threw her boots off at the door, flopping onto the couch like she belonged there. She picked up one of Lorraine's old real estate binders and flipped through it. Damn, she muttered. Your aunt owns like half the city. I shrugged. I hadn't known that. She ever tell you how she got all this? She doesn't tell me anything, I said. Amber smirked. Figures. You're a secret too, aren't you? I didn't answer, but I think she already knew. That night, we slept in the same bed. Not touching. Just breathing near each other like stray dogs learning how to trust again. Amber whispered things in the dark. About her stepdad. About nights locked out. About her mom's boyfriends who never remembered her name. I listened like it was scripture. I didn't tell her anything back, but she never asked. That's what made her different. By the time I turned 14, the house no longer felt like a waiting room. It felt like purgatory. And something about that started to feel safe. I didn't realize how twisted that was until much later. I was on the honor roll, barely speaking unless I had to. I cut my hair short and started dressing in black, trying to make myself look like static. Like nothing anyone would want to touch or take. One morning, Lorraine handed me a manila folder at breakfast. Her toast was untouched. Her hands were shaking so slightly I almost missed it. What's this? I asked, cautious. Your application for the magnet program, she said, eyes not meeting mine. Advanced placement track. I didn't apply. I did. Her voice was iron. You're capable of more than you believe. I stared at her. Why? She looked at me then. Really looked. Like someone seeing the edge of a cliff and deciding whether to jump. Because I don't waste resources, she said. It was the closest she ever came to telling me I mattered. I didn't open the folder until I got to school. Inside were printed essays I didn't remember writing, recommendation letters forged in Lorraine's perfect cursive, and a cover letter signed with my name. She hadn't asked me. She just knew I wouldn't do it. That afternoon, I found her in her office, sorting through real estate files with that same surgical precision. I stood there, the folder in my hands, and said the one thing I knew would matter to her. I won't embarrass you. She looked up. Her mouth twitched. Almost a smile. Then she nodded and went back to her work. Amber hated the magnet program. Said I was turning into one of them. But she still met me after school most days. We'd walk through the parking lot in silence, her boot heels tapping like defiance against the cracked pavement. You ever think about running away? She asked one day, lighting a cigarette with a stolen lighter shaped like a bullet. Where would I go? She shrugged. Somewhere no one knows our names. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to say take me with you, anywhere, please. But I just looked at the smoke rising from her mouth and said, you'd miss the smell of mildew in your mom's hallway. She laughed. Loud. Real. Bitch, you're twisted. So was she. That's why we fit. 1 month later, she was gone. No warning. Just an empty seat in homeroom and a rumor that she'd dropped out to live with some older guy. I told myself I didn't care. But that night, I sat on the bathroom floor and cut off the rest of my hair with kitchen scissors. I left the mess in the sink. Lorraine didn't say a word. She just bought new clippers and left them on my bed with a sticky note. Next time, use these. The day I got my magnet acceptance letter, I expected Lorraine to make some comment about my GPA or discipline. Instead, she placed the envelope on the table and said, they'll want to interview you. I swallowed hard. What do I say? Tell the truth, she said, sipping her black coffee. No one wants that, I said. Her eyes locked on mine. Exactly. That night, I stood in front of the mirror, wearing the one dress Lorraine had ever bought me. It was navy blue and sharp at the collar. I looked like a stranger. Like someone who hadn't been thrown away. Before bed, I went to her office and hovered in the doorway. "Thank you," I said, my voice almost too small to hear. She didn't look up. "Don't thank me yet." The next morning, I went to the interview. And for the first time in my life, I didn't pretend to be smaller than I was. I sat up straight. I told the truth. They accepted me within the week. Later, when I asked Lorraine why she'd done it, why she'd fought for a girl who barely spoke, she finally gave me the answer I'd been craving all along. Because someone once gave up on me. I made a promise I wouldn't do the same. That was the first time I realized Lorraine loved me. And the last time she ever said anything close to it. I was 28 when Lorraine's heart stopped in the middle of a client call. No warning. Just silence on the other end of a Bluetooth headset, her body slumped in the leather chair she'd kept perfectly dusted for 2 decades. They found her like that, hand frozen around her pen, checkbook open. The client had been on hold for 42 minutes before calling the office line to ask if she'd fallen asleep. I got the call from Henry Lowell. I knew his voice from the background of Lorraine's life, the man behind the contracts and contingency clauses, the one who wore polished shoes and measured his breath before speaking. "She's gone," Henry said softly. "I'm sorry, Elise. No one prepares you for the way grief moves when it isn't gentle." There was no wailing, no collapse. Just a strange stillness. I stared at the wall above my kitchen sink for 6 hours. The dishes sat untouched in soapy water. The air smelled like lemon and rot. The next morning, I found her will in a red folder labeled "In case of me." Of course she'd planned it that way. Lorraine had always treated death like another business transaction, inevitable, manageable, documented. What I didn't expect was the letter. It wasn't long. Just 4 sentences, typed in her usual no-nonsense font. "Elise, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I didn't raise you for thanks. I raised you for survival. Do not let them take a single thing." At first, I didn't understand what she meant. Then Henry called again. "You need to come in," he said, his voice a little tighter now. "You should hear this in person." The office was a glass tower downtown, clean lines and artificial light. I sat across from Henry in a room with soundproof walls, his assistant sliding 2 glasses of water between us like we were prepping for a negotiation. "I want to start with the basics," he said, folding his hands. "Lorraine left everything to you. No trusts. No partial allocations. Full transfer." My throat tightened. "Everything? 12.4 million in liquid assets. Commercial properties. 2 undeveloped lots. 4 rental buildings in Midtown. Her house. Her vehicles. You're the sole beneficiary." The numbers blurred. They felt obscene. Cartoonish. Like a joke no one wanted to explain. "I don't understand," I said, my voice thin. "She trusted you," Henry said simply. "She didn't like most people. But she respected you. That meant more to her than love." Then he handed me a key. "To the safe in her home office," he said. "She wanted you to see what's inside before you meet with anyone." I didn't ask who anyone was. I found the safe behind a false panel in the closet. Not a cliché painting. Just smooth drywall that clicked open when I pressed my palm against it. Inside, the temperature dropped. It really did. Cold metal. A hum in the air. Like stepping into the nerve center of a machine. There were only 3 things inside. First, the letter. Handwritten, signed by my mother, dated the week after I was abandoned. The paper was yellowed at the edges. The ink shaky and blue. "We can't do this anymore. She's too much. We don't know what's wrong with her. Please, take her. We'll pay if we have to." I read it twice. My lungs shrank. The second item, a printed bank statement. A $50,000 transfer to my father's name from Lorraine's account, marked guardianship release final. And the third, a USB drive. I plugged it into my laptop and stared at the single audio file inside. No label. No context. Just the timestamp from 2 years ago. I clicked play. My father's voice burst through the speaker, slurred and bitter. "I told her, I told her, 50 grand to get rid of the deadweight? Best deal we ever made. That kid was never right, anyway. Cried all the time, like a broken dog. Shit. Paid for half the truck. Then laughter. Not my mother's. A man I didn't recognize. They laughed until the tape clicked off. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I closed the file and shut the laptop. My hands were steady when I opened a drawer and took out a Sharpie. I wrote 3 names on the wall above my desk. Lorraine. Elise. Them. I circled the first 2. Drew a line through the last. Then I waited. The memorial was small. Lorraine had always said funerals were for the living, not the dead, and she didn't much care for either. It was held in the courtyard of one of her commercial properties, an old theater she'd refurbished into office spaces. The air smelled like fresh paint and roses. The mourners came dressed in muted tones, all politeness and folded hands. And then I saw them. My mother wore white. White. Like a goddamn bride of grief. She dabbed her eyes with a silk handkerchief and clutched the arm of a man I hadn't seen in 15 years. My father. Still thick around the middle. Still walking like the world owed him smooth sidewalks. His eyes locked on me like he expected a hug. Before I could move, they closed the space between us. My baby, my mother choked, flinging her arms around me. I didn't move. Her perfume was the same. Too sweet. Like rotting flowers. Every muscle froze in place. My hands rested quietly at my sides. I told your father, she whispered, drawing back just enough to meet my eyes. I said, she'll make us proud one day. And look at you. You did. You truly did. I stepped away. My father laughed, loud and unrestrained, echoing like empty bottles in a garage. We always knew you'd make it, he said, reaching toward my shoulder. I recoiled before I could stop myself. They seemed not to notice. They remained through the service. Sat in the front row as if they belonged there. My mother dabbed gently at her eyes. My father rose for the closing prayer. From the podium, I watched them and imagined a weight settling across their backs. That night, I was served. A knock on my door. A man in a grey suit. A manila envelope. My name in bold. Notice of intent to pursue civil litigation. They were suing me. Wrongful alienation from familial assets. They claimed Lorraine had coerced me, turned me against them, and manipulated her own will. They claimed I was emotionally unstable, unfit to manage an estate of this size. They called me hostile, estranged, damaged. But what they didn't know, what they could never know, was that Lorraine had seen this coming. She had weaponized truth. And now it was mine. I emailed Henry the next morning. Subject line, initiate response. He replied 3 minutes later, let's end them legally. The first headline hit a week later. Estranged parents file suit over $12 million inheritance. My name wasn't in the title, but my face was. The one from my college graduation photo, clean, soft, unarmored. The version of me they liked best. By the time I walked into Henry's office, the front desk girl was already whispering to a coworker. I could feel it, how the air got tight when I passed. People didn't know whether to pity me or be afraid. I liked it that way. They're pushing hard, Henry said as I sat down, motioning to a stack of folders. Their lawyer is a bruiser. He's not in it for the win. He's in it for the settlement. Then he doesn't know me, I said. Henry smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. He will. He opened the file and slid out a copy of the complaint. 46 pages of revisionist history. They painted me as an unstable teen with aggressive tendencies who was removed from parental custody due to emotional volatility. According to them, Lorraine isolated me, discouraged reconciliation, and engaged in undue influence to redirect inheritance intentions. They used the word orphan in quotation marks. Like a slur. Can I speak? I asked, voice level. Henry shook his head. Absolutely not. That's what I'm here for. I leaned back in the chair and crossed my arms. Then dismantle them completely. It wasn't just money. It wasn't even justice. It was something darker. A need to make them feel the same silence they left me in behind that roadside stop. Not just once, but every year, every birthday, every time I scraped blood from my knees without a mother to clean it. I want to go public, I said. Henry's expression shifted. That's dangerous. So is pretending I don't exist. He exhaled slowly, rubbing the bridge of his nose like he was trying to press the headache back in. Let's start with court. Then we talk exposure. The hearing date was set for 31 days later. That gave us 4 weeks to prepare. 4 weeks for me to sit across from lawyers and re-watch the worst parts of my life like they were a movie I'd never asked to be in. The USB. The letter. The wire transfer. Henry reviewed every piece like it was sacred scripture. I memorized them until I could recite the timestamps of my father's voicemail in my sleep. You'll stay quiet, Henry reminded me again and again. No outbursts. No commentary. Let the tape do the talking. I nodded. But inside, I burned. The day before court, Pastor Dale called. He left a message. Elise, it's Pastor Dale from First Shepherd. I've been speaking with your parents. They're hurting. And I think it would mean a lot if you came in for a conversation. Sometimes the Lord uses conflict to bring us back together. Think about it, sweetheart. I played it twice. Then blocked the number. The morning of the hearing, I wore black. Not a soft black. Not silk or cotton. Structured. Ruthless. A blazer Lorraine had once worn when she negotiated 3 properties out from under a man twice her size. I pinned her brooch to the lapel, steel with a tiny garnet stone. It was the only thing of hers that felt like armor. They were already seated when I arrived. My mother looked thinner. My father looked tired. But their lawyer sat upright, hands folded, smirking like he thought this would be easy. I didn't look at them. I looked at the judge. She was a black woman with silver braids pulled into a knot. Her face was unreadable. Perfect. Henry began. He didn't start with the will. He started with me. Elise Ward was abandoned at 13 years old. Not neglected. Not placed. Abandoned. We have written and audio evidence of this. The courtroom shifted. You could feel it. People blinking, adjusting. The narrative changing in real time. Then he played the voicemail. My father's voice filled the room. Dead weight, best deal we ever made, paid for half the truck. No one breathed. No one blinked. My mother closed her eyes. The judge raised a hand. That's enough, she said. Their lawyer stood, ready to counter, but she cut him off with a look. Motion denied. Inheritance stands. Just like that. Like truth was a guillotine. Sharp, swift, indisputable. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. Henry shielded me, but I stopped him. I have one thing to say, I said, stepping forward. Flashes went off. Microphones extended. I spoke clearly, coldly. My name is Elise Ward. I was abandoned at 13. My aunt, Lorraine Ward, saved my life. And I will honor her with every breath I take. Then I walked away. But I wasn't finished. 2 days later, the foundation launched. The Lorraine Ward Foundation for Abandoned Minors. Its mission was simple: visibility, advocacy, and direct intervention for kids like me, discarded, unwanted, forgotten. The press release included my story. I named them. Not out of vengeance, but transparency. I included quotes from the voicemail. I included scanned copies of the guardianship transfer. I included the letter, my mother's handwriting exposed like a wound. The fallout was immediate. Their church issued a public statement distancing itself. Their neighbors stopped waving. My father lost his job within a week. My mother's book club folded. Their lawyer quietly withdrew representation. They sent me a letter. Just 4 words. You humiliated us. Why? I framed it. Hung it next to Lorraine's will. Every check I wrote under the foundation's name, I matched from my own funds. Every dollar felt like stitching. Like I was sealing the hole they'd carved in me. Not with forgiveness, but with fire. And then, one morning, Claudia knocked on my office door. She was 21. Foundation intern. Blonde, green-eyed, still believed the world was mostly good. I have a case, she said breathlessly. A girl. 14. Dumped at a truck stop outside Bakersfield. Left a voicemail on our hotline. Said her name was Maribel. I felt the floor shift. Because Maribel didn't sound like a stranger. She sounded like me. The recording of Maribel's voice came through a pair of cheap plastic speakers on my desk. Tinny, young, frantic. Hi. If this is real, if anyone hears this. I'm at a Shell station off 99 near Bakersfield. I think my mom left. She said she was getting cigarettes and it's been 4 hours. I don't want to call the cops. A pause. I think something's wrong with me. Please help. I stopped the playback. Claudia stood across from me, wringing her hands like a child who'd broken something important. She's still there? I asked. Claudia nodded quickly. We called the station. Attendant said she's been sitting on the curb with a backpack and a Slurpee for hours. Local PD's en route, but we have a mobile team already halfway. Pull the police off, I interrupted. Have our team get her first. Claudia blinked. That's a liability. No, I said, standing. That's trust. It was a rule at the foundation. One I wrote myself. Cops last. Compassion first. These kids didn't need another uniform asking questions. They needed a voice that didn't sound like judgment. Maribel was small. Barely 5 feet. When the team brought her into the safe intake room 3 hours later, she refused to make eye contact. Her shoes were 2 sizes too big, and she kept chewing the inside of her cheek until it bled. I stood behind the observation glass, watching. My hands ached from clenching. She hasn't said much, Claudia whispered beside me. Only asked if we had chips. Then said she'd sleep on the floor. She doesn't trust the bed, I said. She thinks sleeping soft means someone can sneak up on you. Claudia looked at me, confused. I didn't explain. I didn't have to. Later that night, after the intake coordinator left, I went into the room myself. Just me and her. No clipboard. No cameras. Maribel looked up from the corner where she'd cocooned herself in a fleece blanket. Her hair was matted, and her lips were cracked. I'm Elise, I said, sitting on the opposite side of the room. I heard your message. Maribel didn't respond. You're safe now. You don't have to talk. You just have to stay. A beat. 2. Then she said, Why'd you come here? Because you asked. I didn't think anyone would hear it, she whispered. I nodded. Most people don't. But I did. She stared at me, wide-eyed. You real? I am, I said. I was you. She didn't cry. She didn't break. She just blinked, slowly, like her brain was recalibrating what safety looked like. What a grown woman could be when she wasn't lying or leaving. It cracked something open in me. Later that week, I called Devontae. I hadn't spoken to him in over 10 years. He answered like he'd been expecting the call. Elise Ward, he said warmly. I wondered when you'd show back up. I need a trauma specialist, I said. 13. Female. Abandoned. High-functioning, low-trust, already dissociating. He was quiet for a second. Then, that description fits 2 people I know. I can't do this alone. You never had to, Devontae said softly. After I hung up, I sat in my office for a long time. The lights off. The silence deep. I didn't cry. I wanted to. But the tears never came. Like they belonged to someone I used to be, and that girl had already spent them all behind a dumpster in Reno. The press picked up Maribel's story. Not her name, but the rescue, the pattern. Another girl discarded. Another reason the foundation matters. I gave a statement, this time behind a microphone instead of a bulletproof desk. These aren't isolated cases, I said. They're echoes. Each one is a mirror of a past someone tried to bury. We hear them. We see them. And we will never look away. A week later, I got a cease and desist letter from Pastor Dale. It was typed, signed, and dressed up in the kind of soft legalese meant to intimidate people who don't know what power smells like. He accused me of publicly maligning the congregation, intentionally defaming spiritual leaders, and sowing discord within a faith-based community. Henry laughed when I brought it to him. Do they think scripture is copyright protected? He asked, flipping through the pages. They think shame works, I said. You gonna respond? No, I said, taking the letter and sliding it into a folder labeled fuel. Instead, I commissioned a billboard. 2, actually. One across the street from First Shepherd Church. The other a block from my parents' now rented duplex. White background. Black text. No image. Just the words, "We never throw kids away." The Lorraine Ward Foundation below that, in small italics, in memory of every child someone tried to forget. Within 24 hours, they trended on Twitter. Within 48, local news did a segment. Within 72, someone threw red paint across my parents' front door. I didn't condone it. I didn't stop it either. Meanwhile, Claudia brought in a stack of letters from donors, survivors, allies. Every word a small rebellion. Every name a reminder I wasn't alone. One envelope caught my eye. No return address. Just the name Amber written in blue marker. My stomach dropped. Inside was a note, written on a paper napkin. He's dead. I'm in Sacramento. You still drink black coffee? I hadn't thought about her in years. Not really. Just pieces. Flashes. Laughter in the dark. Safety pins on denim. A girl who saw me before I saw myself. She was back. I didn't know what that meant. But I knew what I felt. The past wasn't done with me yet. I met Amber at a diner on the edge of East Sacramento, the kind of place where the waitresses wore orthopedic shoes and the coffee came in chipped mugs. She was already at the corner booth, stirring sugar into a cup she probably wasn't going to drink. When I slid into the seat across from her, she looked up with a smirk so familiar it punched the air out of my chest. You got tall, Amber said, her voice rougher than I remembered. There was a scar above her eyebrow I didn't recognize. You didn't, I said. We stared at each other for a beat too long. Then she laughed. Low. Dangerous. Like she still smoked cloves behind grocery stores. I wasn't sure you'd come, she said, leaning back. I wasn't sure you were real. Amber pulled a flask from her jacket and poured 2 drops into her coffee. I didn't flinch. She raised her eyebrows. Still don't judge, she asked. I shrugged. I've upgraded. Now I weaponize it. Amber smiled, but her eyes were scanning me. Not like an enemy, like someone assessing the burn damage beneath a bandage. Her gaze snagged on the brooch pinned to my coat. Lorraine's. I nodded. She died quick, I said. Didn't see it coming. Amber looked down at her hands. Good. That woman never blinked. She deserved to go out without warning. That stung more than I expected. She saved me, I said quietly. She controlled you, Amber shot back, just as quiet. The waitress came and took our orders, 2 coffees, 2 breakfast specials, no small talk. Once she left, Amber leaned in. I followed the trial, she said. Your parents are still acting like you owe them heir. That's some bullshit, Elise. They picked the wrong dead woman to challenge, I said. Amber's eyes flared like matches catching. So what now? You do philanthropy with a flamethrower? Something like that. We sat in the thick silence of shared history. Outside, the sky bruised pink. I could smell overcooked bacon and bleach. I waited. I knew Amber hadn't come back just for nostalgia. He died last month, she finally said, voice dry. The older guy. The one I ran away with. I didn't ask who. I didn't need to. I could fill in the blanks, coercion, addiction, small-town oblivion. The weight of it settled between us like second-hand smoke. Was it bad? I asked. She shook her head. Worse. She didn't elaborate. She didn't have to. He ever hit you? I asked. She looked up, eyes sharp. Only once. And the rest? She smiled with no joy. He made me disappear in quieter ways. I understood. There are wounds you can hide with makeup and wounds that change your walk forever. Amber had both. I pushed my coffee aside. You need a place? I asked. A job? She blinked. You offering? You're the only person from my past who never lied to me, I said. That's rare currency. Amber exhaled hard, then nodded once. I don't want pity. I'm not offering any. She smiled for real this time. Then yeah, she said. Let's build something ugly and honest. She moved in that week. Not into my house, but into one of the foundation's transitional units, apartment 2B, next to Claudia's. It wasn't charity. It was math. Amber had survived. She had something to give back. Watching her in staff meetings was like watching fire learn how to sit still. She argued with lawyers, snapped at donors, called bullshit faster than I could blink. But she also sat with girls like Maribel, held their hands when they cried, let them scream until their throats went raw. One night, I found her in the courtyard, smoking in the dark. I sat beside her without a word. She passed me the lighter. You still believe in redemption? She asked. I believe in receipts, I said. She laughed. That's more honest than church. That same night, Claudia knocked on my door, eyes wide. We've got a problem, she said. Maribel? I asked instantly. She shook her head. Your parents. They're doing interviews. Podcasts. A new one just dropped, 40 minutes of them painting themselves as victims of a manipulative heiress. My chest constricted. Send me the link, I said. I didn't listen to it right away. I waited until the house was dark and quiet. I lit a candle. I poured whiskey into a ceramic cup Lorraine had once used for paper clips. Then I pressed play. My mother's voice, trembling just enough. We've tried everything. We just want to be a family again. My father, louder, bolder, she was always different. Troubled. We did what we thought was best. They called the foundation exploitative. Said I was emotionally hijacked by an embittered woman. Said Lorraine poisoned me. Said I weaponized a false narrative to gain sympathy and power. I turned it off after 17 minutes. Not because it hurt. Because I'd heard better lies from strangers in the checkout line. The next morning, I called Henry. Can we sue for defamation? I asked. He sighed. Yes. But is that what you want? I didn't answer right away. It's not about clearing my name, I said eventually. It's about finishing the story. He didn't ask which story. He knew. A week later, I stood in front of a podium again. This time in New York. Press conference for the Foundation's East Coast launch. I wore black again. Sharp lines. Lorraine's garnet brooch. The room pulsed with cameras and anticipation. I didn't read from notes. I was abandoned at 13, I said, my voice steady. Some people have questioned that. Some people have tried to rewrite my past. But here's the truth. They left me. They sold me. And now they can't buy their way back. I held up the USB drive. This is my receipt. But the real proof is in every kid we save. Every girl who doesn't disappear. Flashbulbs went off like thunder. I stepped down from the podium and didn't look back. That night, my parents' podcast account was shut down for violating terms. Their last employer released a statement. The church deleted their online sermon archive. And Claudia came to me with a folder. There's someone else you should see, she said. I opened it. Inside was a photo. A girl. 17. Foster system. Pregnant. History of abandonment. Recently expelled for fighting. Name, Elise Maribel Ward. I stared. Same last name, Claudia said. You think it's a coincidence? I didn't know yet. But something in my gut told me this wasn't just another girl. She was a mirror. And she had my name. The first thing I noticed in the photo wasn't her face, it was the defiance in the way she stood. Chin tilted up like a dare. Jaw clenched. Eyes dark. Feral. She looked like a girl who had been burned and decided to set the world on fire in return. Her file was thin. Too thin. Just 2 pages. Standard intake. First name, Elise. Middle, Maribel. Last, Ward. Born in Stockton. Bounced through 7 placements in 5 years. No listed relatives. No stable placement since age 13. Pregnant at 17. Expelled for violent conduct. There were no medical notes. No trauma index. No therapist letters. Just empty space where her story should have been. I want to meet her, I said. Claudia hesitated. She's difficult. So was I. Amber found me in my office 20 minutes later, holding the photo. She yours? Amber asked, her tone sharp. I don't know, I said honestly. Amber studied me. You think they had another one? If they did, it's not on any record. Amber leaned against the wall and crossed her arms. You gonna DNA test her? No, I said. Not yet. That's not the question I care about. Then what is? I looked down at the girl again. Why does she have my name? When I walked into the intake room, Elise Maribel Ward was sitting backward on a plastic chair, chewing the end of a pencil and kicking her foot against the wall like it owed her something. She didn't look up when I entered. I'm Elise, I said. I know, she said flatly. Billboards and all. You have my name. She finally turned to face me. I had it first. No, you didn't, I said calmly. But that doesn't mean I'm here to take it back. Her eyes narrowed. Are you gonna adopt me? No good, she snapped. I don't do mothers. Neither do I. That made her pause. Her shoulders relaxed an inch. You pregnant? I asked. She rolled her eyes. What gave it away? The stomach or the file? I read your file. Doesn't tell me shit. She smirked. Because no one ever asked. I sat down across from her. So I'm asking. Elise stared at me like she was trying to decide if I was a cop, a liar, or both. My mom said I was named after someone who died, she finally said. Said she owed her something. I don't know if it was money or blood, but it was a debt. That's all I ever was. A payment. What was your mom's name? She shrugged. She changed it every month. Angel, Crystal, Shayna. Take your pick. I leaned forward slightly. You ever hear the name Lorraine Ward? That landed like a slap. She flinched, barely, but it was enough. Why? She asked, her voice low. Because she raised me. And she paid someone to walk away. The room went silent. Only the ticking of the cheap wall clock filled the space. Was your mom paid? I asked. Elise looked at the floor. I think so, she whispered. She always said I wasn't supposed to be hers. Said someone was supposed to come back for me, but they never did. My stomach twisted. I stood. She looked up, ready for a storm. Instead, I reached into my pocket and handed her Lorraine's garnet brooch. She'd want you to have this, I said. I don't even know who she is, she muttered. You will. Later that night, Amber stood in my kitchen, arms crossed. She's gonna break you, she said. I'm already broken, I said. But maybe she doesn't have to be. Amber walked over and poured us both a drink. Her hands were shaking slightly. Promise me you won't turn her into a cause, she said. She's not a billboard. I know. Amber's voice cracked. Do you? I looked at her. Really looked. She's me, Amber. She's you. She's all of us. Amber took a sip of her whiskey and stared at the window. Then save her, she said. Before she burns the world down. The next morning, Pastor Dale issued a public apology. Well, statement of regret. Same thing, dressed in softer words. He called his earlier remarks misguided and praised the foundation for its commitment to healing and hope. 2 hours later, his son was caught on video spray painting "liar" on our downtown mural. Amber posted it online with the caption, "When the church says turn the other cheek, but only after they slap yours first." It went viral in under an hour. Donations tripled. We had to hire 3 new interns just to handle the intake flood. Claudia pulled me aside in the hallway. Your parents are on radio silence, she said. Lawyers gone. Lawsuits dead. Reputations tanked. Are we done with them? I thought about it. Thought about the silence. The surrender. No, I said. Not until they apologize. They won't. Then they'll stay buried. That afternoon, I got an email from an anonymous address. No subject. No body. Just a single image. My childhood bike, rusted and bent, tossed beside a landfill. I recognized it by the handlebar streamers. They were red. I didn't reply. But I saved the photo. Because sometimes, when you throw something away, it finds its way back. The first time I saw Elise Merrybell cry, it wasn't because she was scared or angry. It was because someone handed her a toothbrush that hadn't been used. She stared at it like it was made of diamonds. Turned it over in her hand, bristles up, bristles down. Then her shoulders started to shake. She didn't sob. She didn't make a sound. Just stood there in the staff bathroom with her back to me, trying to cry as quietly as she could. I stood in the doorway and didn't say a word. Because I remembered that feeling. Of being handed something small and clean and thinking this must be a mistake. Later, she sat on the edge of the bed in her unit, arms wrapped around her belly like it might float away if she let go. Her eyes darted around like she was tracking exits. "You think I'm gonna keep it?" she asked. "No," I said. "I think you're trying to figure out what part of yourself to kill first." Her head snapped up. "I'm not afraid of babies," she said. "I'm afraid of being like her." "Me too," I said. She studied me. "Did you ever want one?" "Once," I said. Before I realized I wasn't built for soft things. Elise shifted. "Maybe none of us are." Amber brought her a stack of clothes the next day. Stuff she'd picked out from a second-hand shop down the street. She made a show of dumping it on Elise's bed and saying, "No offense, but that hoodie looks like it survived 2 wars and a flood." Elise narrowed her eyes. "You my social worker or something?" Amber grinned. "God, no. I'm your designated pain in the ass." That night, they sat on the front steps sharing a sandwich like they were old cellmates. Amber handed her a soda. Elise said, "If this has caffeine, I'm keeping the baby out of spite." I watched from the office window. Something tight in my chest unwound just a little. But it didn't last. 3 days later, Elise disappeared. She was supposed to check in at 9 a.m. for her appointment with Devonte. At 9:15, her door was locked. At 9:30, she was gone. No note. No call. No sign of forced entry. I felt the old panic slam through me like a truck, fast, brutal, breath-stealing. I called Amber. She cursed loud and clear. "I'll check the gas station by the river," she said. "She's smart enough to go somewhere you'd never look first." Claudia checked the bus depot. Nothing. I sat in my office with her intake photo in my lap, tracing the outline of her face with my thumb like it might conjure her back. At 4:46 p.m., we got a call. She'd been spotted outside the apartment of an ex-foster sister, someone from placement 2, maybe 3. The girl had slammed the door in her face. Elise had sat on the curb for an hour, talking to herself. When our outreach team got there, she was barefoot. One arm bleeding from a cut on her wrist. Not deep. Not a cry for help. Just a pressure release. A reminder she was still here. They brought her back wrapped in a sheet. I met her at the door. She looked up at me, eyes hollow. "I wasn't trying to run," she said. "I just needed to see if anyone would notice I was gone." "I did," I said, my voice low. She nodded. "That's new." Amber sat with her while Devonte stitched her up. No hospital. No report. Just quiet hands and steady breath. "She's gonna do this again," Amber said, lighting a cigarette in the courtyard. "She's wired like we are. Broken, jagged, and always looking for the next sharp thing to push against her skin." "I know. You think we can fix her?" "No," I said. "But we can make sure she knows she's worth fixing." Devonte started seeing her twice a week. She didn't talk much, but she started drawing. Pages and pages of jagged shapes and faceless girls and fire. Always fire. Once, she drew a girl in a red dress standing in the middle of a gas station parking lot, holding a melting popsicle. She didn't say it was me, but I knew it was. One afternoon, I came into her room to find her staring at the wall. The brooch, Lorraine's, was in her hand. She'd taken it apart. The stone was on the pillow beside her. "You take everything apart?" I asked. "Only things I want to understand," she said. "What'd you find?" She turned the silver backing in her palm. "Nothing," she said. "Just metal and glue." "It still held," I said. Even broken. She looked at me then. I'm scared, she whispered. So was I said. Still am, most days. She didn't cry. But her fingers tightened around the brooch. I don't want to be like her, she said again. Then don't be, I said. Be like Lorraine. Or Amber. Or no one. Just don't be nothing. She nodded, once. And for the first time, I believed she heard me. That night, I dreamed of the gas station. But this time, I wasn't left behind. This time, I walked inside, bought the gum, and never came back out. The truck peeled off without me. And I watched it disappear without a single tear. I woke up with my fists unclenched. In the morning, Elise was waiting at my door. Her hair was combed. Her clothes clean. She held up a sheet of paper, an ultrasound. Grainy. Unclear. She has a heartbeat, she said. And I think I'm gonna try. I reached out. Not to hug. Just to steady her hand. She didn't flinch. But she did say, don't leave. And for the first time in my life, I could say it back and mean it. I won't. I didn't tell her I'd already updated my will. I didn't tell her I'd changed the Foundation's articles of incorporation. I didn't tell her I'd listed her as my successor. She'd find out when she was ready. If she ever ran again, I wouldn't chase. But I'd leave the door open. Because someone once did that for me. And now it was my turn. The billboard went up the day before her due date. Downtown, corner of K and 12th, high enough to catch the morning sun, low enough to stop traffic. It didn't feature a photo. No smiling child, no helpless hands reaching. No Lorraine. No me. Just 5 words in black on a stark white background. We never throw kids away. Underneath, in fine print, founded by Elise Ward. Directed by Elise Meribel Ward. No press release. No advance warning. Not even an internal memo. We just flipped the switch at 6 a.m. and let the truth speak for itself. By lunch, it was everywhere. Someone posted a photo on Instagram and tagged the foundation. Within the hour, Twitter exploded. She named her after the woman who saved her. The girl became the mother. Full circle. The daughter with the same name. The legacy continues. It wasn't legacy. It was reclamation. And it was Elise's idea. I'm not naming her after you because you saved me, she'd said, weeks earlier, standing in my doorway with the ultrasound in her hand. I'm naming her that because Lorraine didn't try to fix me. She just stayed. That's what people didn't understand about the word saved. It was never about rescue. It was about someone staying long enough for you to breathe again. The media called it healing. They called it poetic. They called it redemption. They didn't see the nights Elise stayed awake with the lights on, hand pressed to her stomach like she was holding her organs in. They didn't see her scream in her sleep. Or freeze when someone knocked too loudly. Or leave her shoes by the door because it made her feel like she could escape faster if she had to. They didn't see the version of motherhood that started in terror and slowly turned into something resembling strength. They saw a billboard. I saw war. Amber was the one who sat with her the night labor started. She rubbed her back while Elise cursed through her teeth and said things like, I changed my mind, and this was a mistake, and I can't do this. You already are, Amber said, voice firm, arms steady. I stayed behind at the house. That was our deal. Elise didn't want me in the delivery room. Said she didn't need an audience for her pain. I understood. But that night, every time the phone didn't ring, I died a little. When it finally did, it was 3:12 a.m. Amber's voice cracked through the line. She's here. You better get down here. The drive to the hospital was a blur of red lights and quiet streets. Sacramento felt like it was holding its breath. I remember gripping the steering wheel so tightly I bruised the heel of my palm. When I walked into the room, Elise was asleep. Not dozing, asleep. Her mouth was slightly open, hair damp, face pale and peaceful in a way I'd never seen. The baby was awake. She was small, swaddled in mint green cloth, one tiny hand twitching like she was ready to punch someone in the jaw. A note was taped to the plastic bassinet. Elise had written it on the back of her discharge instructions. Her name is Lorraine. Not because she saved me. Because she didn't run. She just stayed. EMW. I didn't touch the baby. I didn't dare. I just stood there and looked at her. She blinked at me. Not in confusion or fear. Just calm. Steady. Like she knew exactly what she was here to do. Later, Elise stirred. She winced as she sat up. She's loud, she muttered, voice rough with sleep. Like me. Like Lorraine, I said. She kicked the nurse, Elise added, nodding toward the bassinet. I didn't even cry. The nurse did. I'm impressed. She looked at me, something soft and dangerous in her face. You ever wish you'd had one? I didn't lie. Only when I think about the kid I used to be. She deserved someone like you. Elise looked away. Don't say shit like that. Why? Because it makes me want to believe you. The next day, the papers called it a modern miracle. The girl who was left behind had given birth to a future. But they didn't know what came next. They didn't know Elise stayed up all night checking to see if the baby was still breathing. Or that she refused to call her mine for the first week. I don't own her, Elise said, pacing the nursery. I just get to keep her safe for now. Amber bought a camera. Not to post. Just to remember. She started documenting everything, Maribel's hands brushing Lorraine's hair off her forehead. Claudia holding the baby while Elise wrote late into the night. Devontae sneaking in baby books and sliding granola bars into Elise's coat pocket like it was a game. I watched it all happen from the hallway. The life they were making. The slow, cautious rhythm of something not broken. And for a while, I thought it might stay that way. Until the letter arrived. No return address. No signature. Just a photograph of a small house halfway burned to ash. Familiar siding. A mailbox dented just so. My childhood home. My mother's handwriting scrawled on the back in shaky ink. We lost everything. We're sorry. That's all we can say. They didn't ask for money. They didn't ask for forgiveness. Just that. A last confession. I didn't frame it. I didn't rage. I folded the photo and buried it under the tree behind the foundation building. The same place I'd buried Lorraine's brooch. The same tree we'd planted a bench under with a plaque that read, "You were never too much. They were never enough." That's how I closed that chapter. Not with fire. Not with fame. With silence. And while the world kept turning, we kept building. 2 new shelters. A partnership with the county. A hotline funded in Maribel's name. Claudia started law school. Amber began drafting our first book, not about pain, but about policy. Devontae launched a mentor program. And Elise. She stopped answering questions like a threat. Started asking them like a leader. I watched her stand in front of a boardroom of donors, men in suits, women with diamonds the size of my old rent, and I watched her say, "You don't get to save face if you weren't willing to save the child. This isn't charity. This is reparations." No one argued. She walked out of the room with 2 checks and a promise of 10 more. I walked behind her, holding Lorraine on my hip. She reached for my necklace, Lorraine's old chain, and cooed like she understood the weight of it. One day, she would. One day, she'd ask who she was named after, and I'd tell her about a woman who didn't hug, didn't cry, didn't rescue, but stayed. And I'd tell her about the woman she came from. The one who clawed her way through hell and built something no one could burn down. I'd tell her about Elise. The first one. The second one. All of us. And when she was ready, I'd hand her the story. And she'd write the next part. If you felt that, if it cracked something open in you, you need to hear Amber's story next. Because if you think I survived the fire, wait until you hear what she walked out of. Click the next video. She's ready. Lorraine is 6 now. She likes storms, just like her namesake. She stands at the window during thunder and counts the seconds between flash and rumble, fingers pressed against the glass like she's trying to touch the sky. She doesn't flinch. She doesn't hide. She just listens, calm and wide-eyed, like the sky is telling her secrets. Elise watches her with a quiet pride she doesn't speak aloud. She's softened over the years, not weaker, just no longer bracing for every room to turn into a battlefield. She still carries her scars, but now they're stitched into the seams of a life she chose. She walks lighter. she laughs more. And when she says stay, she means it. The foundation has grown, but it never forgot where it started. Every new branch office has the same plaque mounted in the entryway: we never throw kids away. Amber runs the West Coast division now. Her office smells like lavender and bad coffee. She wears leather jackets to board meetings and dares anyone to comment. Claudia passed the bar and married a woman who used to hate lawyers. They're adopting twins next spring. Me? I come in less these days. I walk the halls like a ghost with keys, checking locks I know will never close on anyone again. I visit the bench under the tree once a month, sometimes with flowers, sometimes with silence. I don't need to be needed anymore. But I'll always be here. Watching, protecting, remembering. The girl who was left behind is gone. In her place stands a woman with an unshakable truth: they were wrong to leave. And I was right to stay. Peace isn't the absence of noise. It's the sound of a child sleeping safely, and knowing they'll wake up loved.
Thank you for staying until the end. If you're still here, that's not an accident. Something in this story hit a nerve, maybe because you've lived through something like it, or maybe because you know someone who has. That's exactly why Toxic Family Stories exists. We bring the hidden truth to light. We say what most people are too afraid to admit happens, every day, behind closed doors. This isn't just storytelling. This is survival. This is pain. This is revenge. We drop a new story every single day: family betrayal, deep scars, and the kind of truth that makes people uncomfortable. If you want these voices to keep being heard, like, share, and subscribe. It helps us keep going. And drop a comment: what do you think about her journey so far? What would you have done differently? And now, don't stop here. Click on the next story.